In the crowded streets of Manchester, there lived a boy named Ethan. He was born into a working-class family where survival was the only priority. His father was a factory worker, often exhausted, and his mother cleaned houses to keep food on the table. Ethan grew up watching his parents struggle, and though he was loved, he quickly learned that dreams were luxuries his family could not afford. As a child, Ethan's greatest joy was drawing. He would sketch on scraps of paper, on walls, even in the dust on the floor. His imagination was boundless, but his teachers often dismissed him. Art won't feed you, they told him. Focus on real work. Those words pierced him, but he kept sketching in secret, believing his drawings were more than just doodles. They were his escape from a world that felt too small. At 13, he entered a local art competition. It was his chance to show what he could do. But when the results came, he wasn't even mentioned. Worse, some laughed at his work, calling it childish. Ethan went home broken, his sketchbook heavy with rejection. That night he almost threw it away. But something inside whispered, "Not yet. This book is your voice. Don't silence it." So he continued, even as life grew harsher. At 15, his father lost his job and the family plunged into debt. Ethan dropped out of school to help. He worked in a grocery store by day and washed dishes by night. Sleep was rare, but whenever he could, he sketched. His drawings became darker, filled with pain, yet also with determination. They were no longer just pictures, they were reflections of survival. By 19, Ethan faced his biggest test. His best friend Daniel was killed in a street accident. Daniel had always encouraged his art, telling him, "One day the world will see what I see in you." Losing him shattered Ethan. For weeks, he couldn't pick up a pencil. But then he remembered Daniel's words. He realized that if he quit now, he would not only betray himself, but also the memory of the only person who believed in him. So Ethan began again, harder than before. He saved every coin he could to buy cheap paints and canvases. His room became his studio, his sanctuary. He painted stories of pain, of resilience, of ordinary people fighting extraordinary battles. His neighbors thought he was wasting time, but Ethan knew he was building something invisible yet powerful. One day, he took a bold step. With trembling hands, he carried 3 of his paintings to a small gallery downtown. The owner, a stern man, barely looked up. "Not interested," he said coldly. Ethan walked out humiliated, but instead of quitting, he decided to try again, and again, and again. Over the next 2 years, he knocked on every gallery door in Manchester. Most rejected him. Some laughed, but a few, just a few, encouraged him to keep going. At 22, he finally caught a break. A local cafe owner agreed to hang 2 of his paintings on the wall. Ethan expected nothing, but within days people began asking about the artist. One evening, a wealthy businessman noticed his work and bought both paintings on the spot. For the first time, Ethan earned money from his passion. It wasn't much, but it was proof that his art mattered. Encouraged, Ethan poured his soul into bigger projects. He painted stories of workers, mothers, dreamers, all in bold strokes that captured raw emotion. Word spread. He was invited to exhibit in small shows, then larger ones. But fame didn't come instantly. He faced countless obstacles, late payments, criticism, and even betrayal by people who promised opportunities and delivered none. Still, Ethan refused to stop. Every rejection, he said, is just another brushstroke in my masterpiece. By 25, Ethan's work reached London. He showcased a collection titled Shadows of the Streets. It captured poverty, struggle, and hope in a way that stunned audiences. Critics who once ignored him now praised him. His paintings sold for prices he never imagined. Yet more than money, what moved him was the letters he received. Letters from strangers who said his art gave them courage, who said his work made them feel seen. But Ethan's journey was not about galleries or fame. He began using his earnings to open community workshops. He invited children from poor backgrounds to paint, just as he once wished someone had invited him. He told them, "Your story matters. Your pain can become your art. Never let anyone silence your voice." Soon, Ethan became more than an artist. He became a symbol of resilience. Schools invited him to speak not just about art, but about perseverance. He would stand in front of young students and say, "I am proof that failure is not the end. I am proof that rejection is not a verdict. I am proof that even if the world doesn't believe in you, you can still believe in yourself." Theirs do too. Years later, Ethan's name became known worldwide. His paintings hung in international galleries. His workshops flourished, and his story inspired thousands. But he never forgot his roots. He still visited Manchester often, walking the same streets where he once felt invisible. He reminded himself daily, "I was that boy with a sketchbook no one valued, and now I am the man who turned that sketchbook into a legacy." Ethan's most powerful message to the world was simple yet unforgettable. Your struggle is not your prison, it is your paintbrush. Use it to create the masterpiece of your life. His story continues to echo wherever dreamers gather, teaching them that talent may be overlooked, dreams may be mocked, but perseverance can turn dust into diamonds. Ethan was never born extraordinary. He was ordinary, painfully ordinary. But what made him extraordinary was his refusal to give up, his choice to keep drawing even when no one cared, his belief that one day his voice would be heard. And so his journey reminds us all, the world will try to silence you, but your art, your dream, your voice, if you refuse to quit, will one day rise louder than any doubt. In the heart of Birmingham lived a boy named Liam. His world was small, his dreams even smaller. His family barely managed to survive. His father was a bus driver, and his mother worked part-time at a bakery. Liam grew up in an environment where money was always tight, and opportunities seemed reserved for others. But deep inside, he carried a hunger that even poverty couldn't kill the hunger to prove that he was more than his circumstances. As a child, Liam struggled in school. Reading came slowly to him. Numbers felt like a foreign language. Teachers labeled him lazy and slow. His classmates mocked him, and soon he began to believe them. At 10 years old, he had convinced himself that he was destined to fail. Yet, there was one teacher, Mrs. Collins, who saw something different. She noticed that though Liam failed exams, he never failed to try. She told him, "Liam, your grades don't define you. Your effort does." Those words planted a seed in his heart. But life didn't grow easier. At 14, Liam's father fell ill and could no longer work. Overnight, the family's fragile income collapsed. Liam took odd jobs delivering newspapers at dawn, stacking shelves in the evening. He was exhausted, but he never stopped. His friends spent weekends at football matches. Liam spent them working. One day, he whispered to himself while pushing heavy boxes, "These struggles will mean something." At 16, Liam faced his first big defeat. He failed his GCSEs. Everyone around him said, "That's it, your future is over." The weight of those words crushed him. For weeks he wandered aimlessly, ashamed of himself. But then he remembered Mrs. Collins's words. Effort mattered. He realized that failure wasn't the end, it was feedback. So instead of giving up, Liam re-enrolled, worked harder, and passed the second time. That small victory lit a fire in him. By 18, Liam dreamed of becoming an engineer. But university was expensive, and his family had no savings. He applied for scholarships and was rejected again and again. The rejections hurt, but he refused to quit. Finally, after his 20th application, he won a small local scholarship. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was enough to begin. With part-time jobs and sleepless nights, Liam stepped into university. The first year was brutal. Surrounded by students who seemed smarter, richer, and more confident, Liam felt out of place. He struggled with lectures, often failing tests. But he had learned one thing from his past: consistency beats talent when talent doesn't show up. So Liam studied longer than anyone else, asked more questions, and refused to disappear. Slowly, his marks improved. Professors who once doubted him began to respect his determination. Still, the universe wasn't done testing him. In his final year, Liam's mother passed away unexpectedly. The grief shattered him. For weeks, he couldn't focus, couldn't work, couldn't even breathe without pain. He thought of dropping out, of abandoning everything. But then he remembered the sacrifices his mother had made, waking at dawn, working long hours, smiling even when exhausted. He realized quitting would dishonor her memory, so he returned to his books with tears in his eyes and fire in his heart. Against all odds, Liam graduated with honors. The boy once labeled slow walked across the stage, his cap and gown, a crown of resilience. His father, frail but proud, clapped with trembling hands. That moment wasn't just a victory for Liam, it was proof that effort, not labels, defines destiny. After university, Liam faced another mountain: finding a job. For months, he sent applications and faced rejection after rejection. No experience, they said, not qualified enough. But Liam had learned that persistence was his superpower. He knocked on every door, attended every interview, until one company finally gave him a chance. It was an entry-level position, but to Liam, it was the gateway to his dreams. In the following years, he worked tirelessly, often staying late, taking tasks others avoided, learning beyond his role. Slowly, he rose through the ranks. His reputation grew not as the smartest, but as the hardest worker, the man who never gave up. Within a decade, Liam became a respected engineer, leading projects that transformed communities. But Liam didn't stop there. Remembering his own struggles, he started a mentorship program for underprivileged youth. He told them, "I was once called lazy. I was once told I would never succeed. but here I stand. If I can rise, so can you. His words lit fires in young hearts, just as Mrs. Collins's words had once lit his. Liam's story spread far beyond Birmingham. He became a sought-after speaker, sharing stages across the UK and abroad. People connected not because he was perfect, but because he was real. He didn't hide his failures. He celebrated them as the stepping stones they were. He reminded the world that failure isn't a full stop, it's a comma, a pause before the sentence continues. Even with success, Liam remained humble. He often returned to his old school, standing in the same classrooms where he had once felt worthless. Looking into the eyes of struggling students, he would say, "I sat where you sit. I know the pain of being doubted. But I also know your story is not finished. Keep writing it." Today, Liam's name is known as a symbol of perseverance. His legacy is not just in the buildings he helped design, but in the lives he touched. His journey proves a timeless truth. You don't need to be born extraordinary. You just need to be stubborn enough to keep going when others stop. And so, Liam's life echoes a message that will outlive him. Your past does not dictate your future. Your failures do not define you. Your persistence does. The boy once labeled a failure became the man who taught the world that effort, resilience, and faith in yourself can turn even the harshest beginnings into the brightest legacies. In a quiet corner of Glasgow, there was a boy named Oliver. He was small, thin, and often invisible to those around him. His father worked double shifts in a steel plant, while his mother cleaned offices at night. Oliver grew up in a modest home where every penny was stretched and every day was about survival. From a young age, Oliver felt different. While other children played football, he loved reading and writing. He filled notebooks with stories of heroes who conquered impossible odds. But instead of praise, he received laughter. Daydreamer, his classmates mocked. His teachers weren't kinder. Writing will never pay your bills, they said. Be realistic. Those words cut deep, but Oliver clung to his stories like a lifeline. At 12, he entered a short story contest. It was his chance to prove himself. He poured his heart into the pages, staying up late under the dim light of a borrowed lamp. When the results came, he lost. The winner was a student from a wealthy private school whose polished writing dazzled the judges. Oliver felt crushed. For days, he avoided his notebook, convinced he wasn't good enough. But then, one evening, his mother found his abandoned notebook. She said softly, "Oliver, the world may not hear you yet, but I do, and your words are powerful." That night, he picked up his pen again. By 16, Oliver faced another storm. His father suffered a severe injury at the plant, leaving him unable to work. The family's fragile finances collapsed overnight. Oliver dropped out of school temporarily to work odd jobs, stocking shelves, cleaning tables, even delivering newspapers before dawn. He was exhausted, but his notebooks never left his side. He wrote during breaks, scribbled on napkins, and dreamed of stories that might one day escape his small world. At 19, Oliver tried to publish his first short story in a local magazine. He mailed it with hope and waited weeks. The rejection letter arrived with cold words, "Not suitable for publication." That first rejection stung, but it wouldn't be the last. Over the next 3 years, Oliver collected dozens of rejection letters. Some were polite, most dismissive. Friends began to say, maybe it's time to give up. But Oliver whispered to himself, one day I will write something the world cannot ignore. At 23, he finally caught a break. A small online platform agreed to publish one of his stories. It didn't pay, but when Oliver saw his name printed for the first time, he felt something shift inside him. He realized that every rejection had been preparing him for this small victory. It was proof that his voice mattered. Encouraged, Oliver doubled down. He worked long shifts during the day and wrote late into the night. His health began to suffer, but his determination grew stronger. At 25, he submitted a manuscript for a novel he had been working on secretly. Publishers rejected it again and again. One editor told him bluntly, "Your writing is too raw, too simple. It won't sell." Oliver went home shattered. For a week, he considered quitting forever. But then he remembered his mother's words, "The world may not hear you yet, but I do." And so he rewrote the entire manuscript from scratch. Finally, at 27, a small publishing house took a chance on him. His debut novel was released quietly, with little marketing. But something extraordinary happened. People connected with it not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Letters poured in from readers who said his story reflected their own struggles. Slowly, word spread, and his book began to sell. Oliver's career took off from there. He wrote more books, each one digging deeper into human resilience, pain, and hope. Critics who once dismissed him now praised his authenticity. He was invited to speak at schools and universities where he told students, "Don't let rejection bury your voice. Every no brings you closer to the yes that matters."